We're going to make a piece of bias tape to use for the center of our wreath, and we're going to do that with a clover bias tape maker. This one says 9 on it. Basically it's going to make a medium width of vine for the center of our wreath. Here's the number 2 applique block that we're working on. So we're making this piece right here, the vine. So I have cut a piece of fabric. It's about 23 inches long. I cut it on the bias, and I put some pictures on the blog to show you what I mean by that. It's a 45-degree angle, and that is an angle that's on your ruler already. So I took a large piece of fabric, I cut a strip at a 45-degree angle. Again, it's on the bias. You're going to take your bias tape maker. You're going to take one of your ends, which should be nice and pointy. If you bend it like this a little bit and give it a little fold, it'll be even easier. You can see the fabric's nice and stiff because what I did was I starched it really well, moving my iron up and down, not back and forth, not pulling on the bias at all. So I've got a lot of nice turn to this piece of fabric, and that's going to help me make this curvy wreath. So I'm feeding the point into the bias tape maker, and you can see that the fabric is popping up right in the center there. I'm going to take a pin, and I'm going to encourage the fabric to keep coming. I'm trying to keep this as even as I can on this end. This is the wobbly part of the whole thing. And I have a little end coming out the other end, which is great. That's what I want. When you turn this over, you can see that you've got your little pieces of vine coming out there. And see how the ends of the fabric are wrapped over so the right edge shows. You want to pin down those 2 ends because we're going to need that held down while we do our ironing. And we're going to pull this so that it's a little circular. So I already have a curve to my bias tape. So you can see I'm picking the iron up slightly and putting it back down. I'm not pulling it along the bias. I'm going up and down. You don't want to pull your little curve out of there. Go over it again if you need to a little bit. Make sure it's nice and firm in there. And you can also put a little bit of glue, Soline fabric glue or Elmer's glue, the stick kind, inside of there if you want to make sure you hold it down really well. So I've gone as far as I can on the ironing board. So I'm going to move up here. Just pin this down again. And keep pulling in a gentle curve and ironing, moving the iron up and down. Oop, see, I messed up there, and that's okay. Just move it back up. Feed it nice and evenly through there and just be gentle with it. And I messed up again, so I will do it again. You can do this as much as you need to make sure you have the edges nice and turned under. And you can see how this is going. It's got a nice curve to it. I'm going to unpin this and just keep going with my pressing. Keep moving around and pressing. Like I said, I starched this earlier to make it nice and stiff, so it's going to tend to really hold that crease, which is good. That's what you want. If I ever have any bias tape left over, which is just a fancy word for a little skinny piece of fabric with the edges turned under, I use the leftover bias tape. I keep it in a little container in my sewing room, and if I need to make a super short stem or just a small wreath, little stem of a flower, then it's really handy to be able to just pull that box out and go through it. So you can see I have a nice curvy stem here, or a vine, for my wreath. So here's the wreath I've already made. You can see how if I wanted to make another one like this, this would be really easy to just sew down here, and then you cut off the excess. And this particular wreath has no leaves covering where the stems come together, so you might be wondering what I did about that. What I did was I came to the end here, I took this end of the stem, or this end of the wreath vine when I came around, and I just ironed this piece under at an angle like this, and I used a little glue on it, I admit, and I ironed it down like that. It was cut to the proper length, so I just stitched that down and cut off the excess. So that's what you're going to do with the end of this. If I had any leaves or flowers that went over that end, of course I could just leave it raw and not worry about it. So that is the way you use a clover bias tape maker to make a vine or a stem.